we now have at least 4 phases to know what is coming. We're currently in the pre-vaccination phase, so the whole idea is to get the population inoculated, and in this phase that features the reduction, the halving of international arrivals, and we expect that to be in place for the rest of the year. Now, as part of this phase, lockdowns should be used as a last resort, and the states will start trialling alternative quarantine plans for vaccinated Australians who are returning. That's the phase we're in. The next phase, phase 2, post-vaccination, we're told, and the PM said he hopes this will be in place around early next year. Now, that includes easing restrictions on vaccinated Australians, so that's sort of talking about, lockdowns and border controls. The new quarantine arrangements for vaccinated Australians will be introduced, who are returning, I should say. The international arrival caps will be restored to around that 6,000 a week, and we'll also start bringing in international students, skilled migrants and humanitarian visa holders. And in phase 2, lockdowns should only occur in extreme circumstances. Then we move into phase 3, which they're calling consolidation. Now, this features a lifting of the ban on outbound travel for vaccinated Australians. So that means if you've got your COVID-19 jabs, you can freely leave the country, which is a massive step because since March last year, the border has been shut. As part of phase 3, the cap on returning vaccinated travellers will also be scrapped, which means that more Australians can return home provided they've been vaccinated. There'll also likely be more travel bubbles. We expect Singapore to be the next cab off the rank, and also the vaccine booster program will be introduced. And for a lot of Australians who are currently in lockdown, this is probably good news. There'll be no more lockdowns as of phase 3. And then we move into phase 4, which is the new normal. This is when all restrictions lift and we learn to live with COVID-19, because by this stage, the majority of the population should be vaccinated. So it means we start to treat COVID-19 like a serious infection. And as part of phase 4, there'll be no more cap on international arrivals, and if you're vaccinated and coming back to Australia, you won't need to quarantine anymore. So as you were saying, Lorna, it's all about vaccination. So if ever there were an incentive to go out and get your jab, the PM is hoping that this plan will provide that. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
A lot of people say, well, why should I get vaccinated? They go, there's not much COVID around in Australia. I've got more chance of getting run over by a car than I have of catching COVID in this country. And to a sense, we're prisoners of our own success in this. If you get vaccinated, you get to change how we live as a country. You get to change how you live in Australia. And I think this is a very powerful message.
Part of the problem, Jane, over the past few months has been vaccine supply. The Prime Minister tried to address this by suggesting that under 60s could perhaps get the AstraZeneca. It caused quite a controversy. He addressed this today, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. It was Monday night after the first National Cabinet meeting of this week where the Prime Minister came out and basically said that he was allowing any adult to go out to their GP and talk to them about getting the AstraZeneca jab if they chose to. So this was seen as quite a change to the vaccine rollout because effectively he was giving anyone access to the AstraZeneca vaccine who wanted it. Now, previously, AstraZeneca has been the preferred vaccine for over 60s and Pfizer for under 60s. AstraZeneca, though, is in plentiful supply. It's being produced here in Australia. Pfizer supplies are much more constrained because they're all being produced overseas. And we will start to see a ramp up in supply over the next few months. But clearly this was a bid by the Commonwealth to open access, to try and speed up the program, but also use up supplies of AstraZeneca that might go to waste. The problem was this came as a massive surprise to the states and also to the doctors who will be administering the jabs. So it really caused quite a lot of confusion as the week went on. But the Prime Minister today, when asked about this, was very defensive. He said the advice from the expert group ATAGI simply recommended AstraZeneca for those over 60. It didn't ban it for those under 60. It just said that if you want to get this jab and you're under 60, you need informed consent. You need to understand the risks, and also Pfizer, if Pfizer isn't available. And of course, that risk is a very rare blood clotting illness that's been linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. But let's take a listen now to what the PM had to say under questioning, about the AstraZeneca advice, but also supply issues in more general.
I know that has caused some concern in the community about how that advice has changed. Well, that is a matter for ATAGI. and that has, of course, impacted on the vaccination rollout. Equally, early on, as you all know, the inability of our suppliers to provide those early doses of AstraZeneca impeded those early weeks of the vaccination program. Happily concede those points as well. But, you know, when you have setbacks, you don't dwell on them. You understand what happened, you learn from them, you fix the program, and you get on with it.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison there, Lorna, acknowledging that there have been setbacks in the national vaccine rollout. We know we are months behind schedule. There has been a change in advice for the vaccines to be used. There have been supply issues, but the communication from the government has not at all times really sort of met expectations.
Jane Norman, thank you.